is a big screen only rule. All right, so screen typically comes in three forms. You've got your big screen, which are your TVs, the middle screen, which are your iPads, and then the small screen, which are your phones. So if you want to keep your child's screen time under control, implement a big screen only rule. That means the only time that they're allowed to watch screens is actually on a TV. And there are many advantages to that. The first one is that when you're on the move, or when you're just in different places where your child is experiencing a bit of boredom, we can be inclined to like quickly giving them our phone. And that's where the screen time usage just kind of piles up and becomes a lot more than what's recommended for your child. But if you have a big screen only rule, you need to be at home, and then you are able to have a much better control over big screens. The other thing is that in small screens, children are getting used to watching YouTube shorts and Instagram reels, and they're getting into this thing of like where they're swiping. And this has been shown that this leads to a shorter attention span. And as they develop, it's kind of stays short instead of learning how to focus. So to avoid this from happening, if you do it on a big screen, then they have to watch dedicated shows, and they can't just like swipe across like short form and very fast moving content. And the third very important thing is safety. We are seeing reports of very inappropriate content, such as that related to sex, that related to violence, that is being portrayed in the form of cartoons, and it's showing up in the content that your child is probably watching on YouTube. And it is so scary to think that, like, you may think that your child is just watching another cartoon. Maybe they're watching an episode of Bluey or Spider-Man, but what they're actually watching is depiction of a sex scene. And that is something that obviously you definitely want to protect your child against. So if you're using a big screen, anybody in the house can monitor exactly what your child is watching instead of them being exposed to inappropriate content on the small screens. So do try this, a big screen only rule, which is like a midway between no screens and what your child is doing right now.
And for me also, I felt big screen also helps because they're further away from the screen, so that at least for their vision as well. I feel with the phone and the iPad, you tend to be a bit closer. So I felt the big screen really helps keep that distance.
Using a TV has been so much better for us because earlier my kid would keep like snatching for my phone, and I really did not appreciate that. So once we kind of put that strict boundary that mummy's phone is for mummy's hands. That's what I used to always tell her when she asked for my phone. I said, no, mummy's phone is for mummy's hand. And let's say once in a while, if I want to show her some videos or some pictures of her cousins, then I still continue to hold my phone instead of just going like, hey, there you go. And then she's just doing whatever. So this is a great rule that's going to help you manage screen time for your child. Which brings me to strategy number 3. Just because you're giving it on a big screen doesn't mean that they're allowed to have unlimited time. And I think one thing that parents always tell me is that my kid cries a lot when I try to switch off the TV. And I just want to give them an example to understand why this is happening. All right. So imagine you are watching your favorite show. Let's say Friends. Friends is my favorite show. Maybe you're watching that episode where Joey is learning how to speak French. And it's such a fun episode. You're so engrossed in it. And then out of nowhere, your husband just comes in and was like, hey, switch off the TV. It's time for dinner. And you would feel so irritated by that. And you'll just be like, but I am the middle of an episode. I really want to see how this turns out. Or even if you're the end of the episode, if somebody just comes and takes a remote and just switches it off, you would lose it. You absolutely would. So why wouldn't a child feel the same way? You are taking away too much power from them. And a much better way to going about switching off the TV or ending or limiting screen time is using a visual timer. So this is a visual timer that I've been using for like 2 years now. It's an absolute game changer because let's be real, time is a very arbitrary concept. I tell you, if you didn't have a clock or a watch, you wouldn't be able to tell how long 5 minutes is. So when you tell your child, okay, 5 more minutes, how are they supposed to know what is 5 minutes? Like, what does it feel like? Versus when you use a visual timer, I can actually put on 5 minutes on this timer, and my child knows that slowly as the time passing, the colored section of the visual timer is getting smaller and smaller. So she visually is able to tell how much time she has left. Let's say, she's watching an episode of Bluey. I know one episode is 7 minutes long, and I'm going to allow her 4 episodes today. So that is so I just put it at like 28 minutes, and, that timer is running. And once that timer runs out and the 4th episode ends, it rings, and that's when we tell her, all right, now it is time to switch off the TV. And this is a very helpful strategy in helping your child understand how much screen time they're allowed and sort of transition away from it a bit more peacefully instead of them feeling that like, what did you come and do, and just throwing a very, very big tantrum about it.
Yeah, I also have the same timer, and I also have the sand timers as well. So if you're doing a short amount of period, like 20 minutes or so, those sand timers are really cute. I use them for meal times as well.
Amazing. And I think the main thing about the use of the timers is the timer itself will not get your child to get very okay with switching off the screen. It is how you enforce the use of the timer. So I'll give you an example. Let's say the timer rings and then your child still throws a tantrum, which is normal, which is expected. And then you say, okay, fine, 10 more minutes. And then you put another 10 minutes and then you walk away. And then when the 10-minute timer rings and then you come in again, they throw another tantrum. They're like, okay, fine, 5 more minutes. Okay, that's the last one. So your child sort of learns that even if the timer rings, it holds no value. Because if I just cry hard enough, I will get more screen time. And that is going to continue the cycle of tantrums instead of using a timer effectively to stop them. So a very important thing is to be very consistent with the use of the timer. And when the timer rings, it is time to switch off the TV. I think a line that I always like to tell my toddler, which I feel works really well, is that I let her choose who is switching off the TV. So the timer is rung, and I will just come and tell her, the timer is rung. Either you can switch off the TV or I can do it for you. And I tell you, 9 times out of 10, she will say, okay, 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 I will do it. I will do it, because they really want that autonomy to be able to do it on their own. And then she switches it off, and then we move on to the next thing. But being very consistent with your rules and your boundaries is going to make this timer work.
And I feel what I would do sometimes is I'd put the timer and then I'd walk away, and I'm like, maybe I'm in the middle of something and the timer goes off. There, you have to make sure you go and remind them, because sometimes they are so engrossed, they will continue. And sometimes I'm so lost, and I go and I'm like, wait, the timer went off how long ago? So we have all of these tools, but you still need to be there as a parent to make sure that they are actually being enforced, or the caregiver, nanny, whoever is there, because kids can still try to take advantage. But I think it's really helped me for my kids, as you said, to visualize time, which when they were younger, they were not able